He took his son to the Mustang launch event, but as soon as the boy opened the car door to take a look inside, the snobbish manager warned him not to touch such an expensive car. The boy nervously closed the door, but the manager still wouldn't let it go.
Is this your son?
Yes, it is.
Would you ask him to keep his hands off the paintwork?
The hot-tempered man first comforted his son, telling him not to be afraid, then turned around and stood up to the manager.
Fantastic. But inside, it's a lump of lard, dressed up to fool the public. My advice is lose the inline six and that idiotic 3-speed, shorten the wheelbase, somehow lose half a ton, and lower the price.
Dad.
But even then, I'll still choose a Chevy Chevelle. That's a terrible car.
But this man wasn't just tough with words. He was the legendary professional racer, Ken Miles. He once drove the Ford GT40 he personally built, defeating Ferrari, who had dominated the 24 Hours of Le Mans for 4 consecutive years. Back in the 1960s, Ferrari was still a small factory whose annual production didn't even match Ford's daily output. Although Ferrari had ruled Le Mans for 4 years, the company was running out of funds and on the verge of collapse. The arrogant Henry Ford II heard the news and immediately sent people to acquire Ferrari. But those insincere acquisition terms made Old Man Ferrari explode in anger.
Brutte, insignificanti
Back to your big
macchine.
ugly factory making its ugly little cars.
E dite a quel porco del vostro padrone che i suoi arroganti dirigenti sono solo una massa di figli di puttana da 4 soldi. Tell him he's not Henry Ford. He's Henry Ford II.
When Ford II heard that, he was furious and swore to spare no expense. He would build the best engine, find the best drivers, and crush Ferrari at the finish line of Le Mans. So Ford's team found Carroll Shelby, the only American who had ever won at Le Mans, but he had been forced to retire due to heart problems and become a car designer instead. Shelby didn't want to accept the offer at first, because the Le Mans track had no banked curves, no guardrails, and required non-stop racing for 24 hours. It was the ultimate test of both driver skill and car performance. Unlike other racing events, a car at Le Mans had to be not only fast but incredibly stable and fuel efficient. So he thought of another top-tier racer, Ken Miles, the hot-headed but exceptionally skilled driver. Ken didn't understand social niceties at all, and even with his amazing driving talent, no sponsor was willing to support him. He drove his self-modified cheap race cars and brought home one trophy after another, yet he was still living in poverty. His auto repair shop, his only source of income, eventually went bankrupt because he wasn't good at dealing with people. At 45 years old, he decided it was time to find a proper job and live a simple, steady life. He promised his wife that he would quit racing and take a regular job at a repair shop. Just then, Shelby came to find him, and when Ken heard his invitation, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ford's upper management was famous for its bureaucracy, full of flatterers who knew nothing but loved to give orders. That was the defining culture of Ford's corporate leadership. The straightforward Ken couldn't adapt to that environment, let alone tolerate all the meddling from the executives, so he flat out refused to race again. But Shelby didn't mind at all because he was sure that Ken would eventually change his mind. He knew that Ken was just like him. There were things they simply had to do, and if they couldn't, they'd feel empty and lost. For both Ken and Shelby, the one thing they had to do in this life was race. Late one night, Shelby brought Ken to the testing base, where a brand new Ford race car stood waiting. As Ken looked at the car Shelby designed, his eyes burned with desire, and his body reacted instinctively as he jumped in and sped down the track. Being a top driver, it took him only one lap to spot the car's flaws. Watching Ken climb out of the car again, Shelby knew that meant Ken had accepted his offer. When he got home, his wife asked what he had been secretly up to lately, and while he tried to dodge the question, she suddenly floored the gas pedal.
It's a bit of racing fun, no?
No, it's not the same at all.
Well, I think it's thrilling!
In truth, his wife didn't oppose him returning to the racing world. She just wanted him to be honest. She had only one condition. This time, Shelby had to pay Ken a proper salary.
It's $200 a day.
$200 a day.
After that, Ken began testing and tuning the car day and night, starting with the oldest trick in the book, covering the car's surface with yarn to study air turbulence during motion. Then came reducing the car's weight, throwing out everything unnecessary. Finally, it was the engine. They used the newest aluminum steel cover to achieve the lightest weight and the greatest horsepower. And so, through the combined efforts of Ken and Shelby, the legendary GT40 was born, a racing miracle built in record time. But just one day before the race, the manager whom Ken had embarrassed earlier told Shelby that Ken's temper and image were too bad for him to represent Ford. Even though Shelby tried everything to convince them, even though Ken knew the car better than anyone and had poured his soul into it, all they could do was reluctantly compromise. Though Ken was disappointed, he still selflessly pointed out that the GT40's brakes had issues and told the replacement driver to be careful during the race. On the day of the race, he stayed alone in the empty workshop, turning on the radio to follow the updates. And soon, his worst fear came true.
The lead Ford, driven by Richie Ginther, retired with gearbox trouble, and the new leader is
Gearbox. What's up, then? Be gentle with it.
Ford's 3 cars at Le Mans didn't even last 24 hours. All were wiped out due to brake failures. Although Henry Ford II was furious about the loss, Shelby was granted full control over the racing team. So he went to find Ken again, knowing that without Ken, Ford would never defeat Ferrari. But Ken was still angry and punched Shelby right in the face. On the grass by the roadside, 2 40-year-old men wrestled like 3-year-old kids. When it comes to men's quarrels, there's nothing that can't be solved with a good fight. Through their relentless effort, the GT40 kept improving, faster, stronger, and more stable each time. Yet the braking problem remained unsolved, and Ken nearly lost his life once during a test drive. The manager, however, sneered at all of it and secretly planned to kick Ken out of the team. When Shelby heard the news, he made a bold decision. When Henry Ford II suddenly visited to inspect the race car that had cost millions to build, Shelby locked the manager alone in the office. Then he invited Ford II to sit in the car and experience it for himself. He did this just to make that arrogant, know-it-all old man accept his driver Ken. When the ride was over, Ford II was terrified, like a 300-pound child, sitting in the car and crying uncontrollably. But the sly old fox wasn't that easy to convince and said the manager had already found someone better. So Shelby bet his own company, letting Ken compete in the Daytona 24-hour endurance race first. If Ken could win Daytona, then he would earn the right to race at Le Mans. At the Daytona circuit, Ken's skill was unmatched, and he led the race with overwhelming dominance. But in a 24-hour endurance race, drivers have to take turns, and by the final hour, the manager's driver was in first place while Ken had fallen far behind. On the platform, the manager had already started popping champagne, while the crew sighed, thinking Ken had definitely lost this time. But Shelby stayed calm, wrote something on a signboard, then walked straight to the track and raised it high in the air. Ken looked up and saw Shelby holding the sign with both hands. It said, "No matter what it takes, push it to 7,000 RPM. Go all out." As Ken slammed the gas pedal to the floor, the GT40 shot forward like a rocket, unleashing its full speed and overtaking car after car. When the manager saw Ken's car picking up speed, his face was filled with worry. As the race entered the final lap, Ken shifted gears and surged ahead into third place. At the last corner, Ken floored the accelerator, pushed past 7,000 RPM, and with a daring turn, not only overtook second place but closed in on the leader, the manager's driver. Soon the 2 cars were neck and neck, the finish line getting closer and closer. With one perfect shift, Ken accelerated to 7,500 RPM, and the manager's driver could only see Ken's exhaust in front of him. Ken finally took the victory. Everyone cheered for him, and Shelby finally let out a long breath of relief. They celebrated wildly, but Ken knew this was only the beginning. The real battle would be at Le Mans. Back home, he told his son, who saw him as a hero, that he would run a flawless lap at Le Mans, the perfect lap no one had ever achieved before. Soon, the day of the Le Mans race arrived, and all the drivers stood on the opposite side of the track, ready to start. As the referee waved the flag, the racers sprinted toward their cars. While others had already started their engines, Ken couldn't get his car door to close, and with no time to think, he had to take off in a rush. The race had barely begun when several cars crashed and broke apart. Their race ended before it even started. Although Ken managed to avoid the crash, his still open car door caused him to fall far behind on the first lap. The red Ferrari roared past him, and the Ferrari driver gave him a mocking smile as he went by. Finally, Ken pulled into the pit, but after all that effort, the mechanics still couldn't get the door closed. Henry Ford II shouted in frustration, while Old Man Ferrari laughed from the stands, until one of Ken's crew grabbed a hammer. Back on the track, he put on his sunglasses and began his furious chase. Even though he was far behind in a 24-hour Le Mans race, anything was possible as long as you didn't give up. As a seasoned racer, Ken had nerves of steel and unmatched focus. Under his control, the GT40 unleashed its full potential, overtaking one car after another, climbing up to 20th place. With a lap time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds, he broke the Le Mans lap record. His son cheered and waved his arms in front of the TV, while Shelby smiled with satisfaction. But that was far from over. On the third lap, Ken pushed the limits even further, averaging an incredible 230 miles per hour, something thought impossible at the time. As he kept accelerating, the crowd erupted in applause, and even the commentators and broadcasters were left in shock.
Someone tell me the miles per hour!
The whole place was boiling with excitement. By dinner time, Henry Ford II had already boarded his private jet and headed for a fancy restaurant. Old Man Ferrari, however, stayed at the track, standing side by side with his team through it all. As night fell and 8 hours of racing passed, the visibility worsened and heavy rain began to pour down. After shining all day, Ken finally became the target of his rivals. But with his precise control, a single smooth brake maneuver not only shook off his opponent, but also forced the other driver out of the race entirely. Now, his only rival left was a single Ferrari. As Ken and the Ferrari driver battled for the lead, the pouring rain made the track wet and slippery, and the GT40's old weakness returned. The brake system began to fail again. By the time he slowly crawled back to the pit, the Ferrari driver had already lapped him once. But Ken didn't give up. He was determined to catch up with Ferrari, twice if he had to. When daylight came, Ken once again caught up to the Ferrari. They sped side by side on the straight, about to enter the corner, but at that speed, neither of them could possibly make the turn. Yet neither man was willing to back down. It all came down to raw courage now. 300 meters from the corner, then 200, then 100. The Ferrari driver finally flinched and hit the brakes, allowing Ken to overtake him. Ken didn't celebrate because that was only the first time. His mission was to overtake Ferrari twice. Expressionless, he kept accelerating faster and faster and faster. Finally, at the exact same spot, he caught up to the Ferrari again. But this time, the Ferrari driver wasn't going to back down. Both of them pushed their cars to the absolute limit. Ken drove his GT40 up to 7,000 RPM, but the Ferrari driver pushed his superior machine all the way to 9,000. The red Ferrari slowly began to overtake the blue GT40, and the Ferrari driver's face showed a smug smile. But in the very next second, the Ferrari's engine gave out completely, ending its race in disaster. Ken had finally beaten his last rival, and as long as he could hold on until the end, he would be the champion. Then the manager came up with another crazy idea. Since all 3 top spots were taken by Ford cars, he suggested to the late-arriving Henry Ford II that Ken should slow down and wait for the others. So the 3 GT40s could cross the finish line together and make history for Ford. Shelby knew it was ridiculous, but there was nothing he could do, so he left the decision to Ken.
My choice.
Ken got into the GT40, shut everything else out, and focused only on driving, pushing faster and faster down the track. He unleashed every bit of the car's potential, while the nervous manager could do nothing but watch. Ken was fulfilling a promise to his son, and his ultimate dream. He pushed the car to its absolute limit, taking every turn perfectly, accelerating on every straight with flawless precision. He ran the perfect lap, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, breaking the record for the 3rd time. He began singing the little tune he and his son always sang after a win, smiling as he gradually slowed down. He didn't want to make things harder for Shelby because he knew how much Shelby had sacrificed to get him into this race. The 3 GT40 crossed the finish line together as planned, but when Ken opened his car door, ready to receive his victory, he saw everyone running toward another Ford driver, McLaren. It turned out that he and Shelby had been deceived. Because McLaren started farther back, he technically covered more distance, making McLaren the official winner. Ken stood there quietly, watching everything unfold before him, and only Old Man Ferrari took off his hat to salute him. Shelby felt deep guilt, knowing that because of him, Ken had lost his chance to become a 3-time champion. But Ken quickly regained his calm because to him, his dream was already fulfilled. He had not only defeated Ferrari, but also surpassed his own limits. With a peaceful smile, he said, "You gave me the chance to race, not the chance to win." But in the end, fate had other plans. During a test run, his brakes failed, and the legendary racer's life came to a close with a touch of regret.